I, I just don't know what to do.
Say, welcome to the DieHardMMA podcast.
Okay. Welcome to the Gemini High Podcast.
Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, Clint McLean. And this week we are headed to Uruguay. Welcome back, everybody. I am stoked for another fight card. This is another one of those fight cards where we have got to get our notepads out. We have to be very, very careful on the betting because a lot of these fights are really close and a lot of these fighters are not well known to us. To get things started this week, first off, I want to point out that we did a very special episode of the Die Hard MMA podcast. We had UFC fighter Juan Adams on the show this week, and I would appreciate it if all of you gave that a listen and a view. Give that man a follow over on Twitter and Instagram. Let's show him some support and some kind words for coming on and sharing some time with us on the podcast. That was really cool, and I would appreciate hearing back from everybody. If that was something that you enjoyed, if that was a show that you liked, let me know. I will try to track down more fighters that are willing to come on the podcast to kind of chat with us for some in-between episodes. I think it'll be a good time. I do want to make mention here, if you wouldn't mind, please poke the like button. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. If you're on iTunes or something like that, give me a 5-star rating, and why don't you go ahead and throw a comment down there on this episode. For those of you that don't know, I know you hear a lot of this on YouTube videos and things like that, but it directly supports the creator. So in this case, if you give a like, if you give a comment, that goes through the YouTube algorithm and more people see it because they think that more people are interested in it. So it really helps me out getting some views, getting some eyeballs on this thing, and it takes you about 2 seconds. So why don't you go ahead and tell me who your favorite fighter of all time is. Hit the like button and tell me who your favorite fighter is in the comments below. Thank you very much. Love you all, and thank you for the support. Let's do our usual recap of last week's card. The UFC on ESPN Plus 5. Robbie Lawler versus Colby Covington. And you know what? Unfortunately, we let that one slip away from us, and I'm a little upset about it. We went 5-4 on picks at UFC Newark for minus 0.7 units, and this is the same story, the same boat that we have been in now for 3 weeks straight. We were set, we were ready for an absolute monster night. We were going to crush it, and then it all fell apart. The worst case scenario happened towards the end of the card and just ruined the whole thing for us. We had 2 small losses and 1 decent win. We're floating just barely negative on those last 3 cards because of it, but man, if we had just gotten one of those fight cards to go our way, we would be sitting on a score. So first thing, Claudio Silva, he did exactly what we thought that he would. He crushed that bum Cole Williams, and he did it in no time at all. Submission at 2 minutes and 35 seconds into the fight, cashing our prop at minus 160. That was gorgeous. Now, we had a massive disappointment in Mara Romero Borella. She had full and complete total control of that fight in round 1. She looked exactly like the fighter that I thought that she would be. Now, props to Lauren Murphy. She turned it up in round 2, and I thought that this was going to be a 1-1, maybe 2-0 type of setup where I wouldn't be mad if a judge gave round 2 to Lauren Murphy. I really wouldn't be, but I also believed that Borella was very capable of having taken that scorecard. So we were worst case scenario 1-1 going into round 3. Borella again looked like she was getting ready to control the striking, and then she just dropped the ball. She completely gassed out, and Lauren Murphy caught her with a big, big knee. So Lauren Murphy messed us up and put us in a hole that I was not expecting to be in. I really thought Borella was a solid play. Now, our third pick of the night, this one, oh boy, Schnell came out and did exactly what I thought he was going to do. That man is a complete monster, and he crushed Espinoza. I thought that he was going to beat him, but I didn't expect it to come in the first 2 minutes of the fight. I thought he was going to take a little bit of time warming up. I thought Espinoza was going to need to gas out and slow down, and then Schnell would clip him. He dominated him. I was right to be stoked and high on Schnell, and we will be keeping an eye on him moving forward, because when I said he was streaking, I maybe misunderestimated just how much he is streaking, even though I was supporting him and on him for that. So, damn, looking forward to match Snell. We hit our double play of the evening with Antonina Shevchenko. She really was dominant in round 1, and then she ran into some adversity. Lucy Pudilova showed up and did what she does, but Shevchenko dug deep. She came out in round 2 and got her out of there, just like we knew she would. I don't want to say we knew she would get her out of there. We knew she would win. Sorry about that. I wasn't sure that she would get it done inside the distance, but damn, that was fun to watch, and Shevchenko might finally be taking some tips from her older sister. She got it done by submission, showing that she is a well-rounded mixed martial artist herself. Boy, we cashed in good on that one. We locked up 2 free units on it, and we are so far at 100% on my double stack plays. Basically, every time I've been confident enough to say that we're going to hit a line twice, that has cashed. I think we're 3 for 3. Salim Touhari unfortunately dropped the ball for us. That was a bit of a bummer. You know what? I stick by what I said in the podcast before. He's the better fighter. He's more well-rounded than Mickey Gall is, but I do think Mickey Gall had some physical advantages, and he also showed some massive improvements. So, you know, I had that fight scored 1-1. I thought it was 1-1 going into round 3, and I expected Gall to gas out, which he did. He did slow down, but he found that third gear. And that's something that you can't really teach. If a fighter is gonna succeed at the higher levels, they've got to be able to crank it up on themselves. They've got to be able to dig deep and be able to hang in there. And that's something we've seen Mickey Gall struggle with in the past, and that's why we bet against him. And it happened here again, but he was able to click. He was able to shift into that gear and put it on in round 3 more than Touhari could. Honestly, I could see that fight going our way. I would not have called it a robbery either way. I thought round 3 was very, very close, and depending on the judge watching it, we might have gotten a split decision go our way with Touhari there. The fact that it went to Gall, I'm not upset about that either. I personally scored it for Gall. Like I'm saying, I'm not being biased here. I'm not saying Touhari should have won. He could have won, and I wouldn't have been upset about it, just like Mickey Gall won, and honestly, I'm not that upset about it. But I think that Mickey Gall's call out of Diego Sanchez at the end of the fight was masterful. That's the best fight for him. He showed improved gas tank, improved cardio management, improved striking, everything. He needs to get that loss back to a legend in the sport. And, you know, Diego Sanchez, you can't get a whole lot lower than Mickey Gall in the division, so maybe, I mean, it's a bad fight for him. I think an improved, better Mickey Gall might actually be able to crush Diego Sanchez the next time they fight, because it'll be a good, 6 months down the road or something like that. But good call out. Good job by Mickey Gall. So we move on to the main card there. Kennedy Njoku comes through just like I told y'all he would. Do you remember when we came on the podcast and I was like, Kennedy Njoku is going to use his nuts to get this done. He's going to block Darko Stosic's big stinky foot with his balls, and that is the path to victory. What the hell happened in that fight? That was the absolute goofiest fight I've ever seen, and they gifted Njoku that win because there's no way in hell Darko could possibly pull away with a win after getting multiple points taken away from him for dick shots. I'm still just having a great time laughing about that fight because it was so ridiculous. I feel so bad for people that bet on Stosic last week because he was obviously the better fighter. He was obviously the winner. I am so happy that from a podcast standpoint, we passed on that. I know a couple people took my breakdown, my lean to Njoku and actually ran with it, and you all got gifted some money there because he was not the better fighter on that night. Now, I don't know if that means that he's not going to be any good going forward, but he did not have a good showing this fight. Stosic, on the other hand, he's a complete stay away. I mean, we stayed off that fight for a reason. He was the better fighter, but he makes poor choices. You can't trust him, and that's something we have to remember moving forward. Both of those guys have little red flags by them. Scott Holtzman destroys Dung Young Ma just like we knew he would. We stayed away from that one as well, but damn. Now, the part of our night that I really find was ruined. This is the fight of the night, in my opinion, that ruined our whole night, because if this doesn't happen, we cash a nice little winner. Trevin Giles gives up the submission to Gerald freaking Meerschaert in round 3. Now, I'm trying not to be too salty here, but let's be real. I am very salty right now. Trevin Giles won round 1 cleanly. He was the better striker, he was the better athlete, and he had complete control of that fight on the feet. But then you know what he did? He decided to grapple with Gerald freaking Meerschaert, and that's just a bad idea. Meerschaert is so good, explosive, and he's got so many submissions on the ground. I mean, even if you're good, it's just not a good idea. And I'm putting a giant dumpster fire emoji next to Trevin Giles from now on. I will be putting him in the bad fight IQ category. He is unbettable until further notice because of what he did. So in round 1, he controls the whole thing. He grapples with Meerschaert, and then he gives up a really, really bad position, and it becomes painfully obvious that Meerschaert is going to be better than him. He's going to be sneakier than him and get these better positions on him that'll make him susceptible to submissions. So you go, you know what? Go back to your corner. It's all good. You still won the round. Come out in round 2. Just don't do that again. Just keep it on the feet. Just don't do that again. He goes down in round 2, and you know what he does? Puts his head down, goes straight to the floor with Gerald Meerschaert. What the hell are you doing, dude? Like, seriously, how did his corner man not walk into the cage and slap him while he's on the mat grappling with Gerald Meerschaert? It was just such a horrific display of ring IQ, maybe one of the worst I have ever seen, because I really think what happened here is that Trevin Giles got some big britches. He said, mine's longer than yours is. I think he just wanted to prove the point that he could grapple with Meerschaert. He said, I'm the better striker. I've proven that. Round 1, I wrecked you, and now I'm going to go on the mat and I'm going to show you I can beat you there too. And you know, when fighters do that, it's super impressive. They get the crowd going nuts. The announcers talk about it. It's like, you know what? He was able to go into the other guy's territory and prove he's the better, more well-rounded fighter, and so impressive, and look what the ceiling is for this guy. It doesn't always work out. And that's what happened here. He completely gave up round 2 because of that decision. And I'm ranting so long in this fight because of how angry I am. It ruined our night because of this stupid bad choice that he made, because he did it again in round 3. Now, mind you, none of this was Gerald Meerschaert. He didn't come down and blast double Trevin Giles. He didn't trip the man and drag him to the mat. Trevin chose to engage in the grappling. He chose to go to the mat with Gerald Meerschaert. Meerschaert wasn't doing shit to get this thing on the ground, and that's what makes this whole thing so bad. If Trevin Giles couldn't defend the takedown, if Gerald Meerschaert was just too dang good and kept, getting him on the mat, getting a hook in, being able to peel him down against the cage and put him on the floor, and Trevin was doing everything he could to stay on the feet, you know what? I'm okay with losing that unit. I'm okay with betting on the guy that will fight until the bitter end for my cash. What I'm not okay with is the guy getting in a submission because he left his neck out, because he is not as good as his opponent is in an area when he has a clear advantage in the other 50% of the fight. I'm done now. Rant over. Sorry you had to deal with that, because I'm still pissed. That ruined our parlay, and I should have just taken Nasrat Haqparast by KO. I told you all he was going to KO Joaquim Silva. I told you all that Joaquim Silva got touched up by Jared Gordon, and Nasrat is twice the fighter that Jared Gordon is. He's got fast hands and bombs on his hands, and it was way too late. 2020 hindsight. Nasrat Haqparast was a plus 200 to win by KO, and that's what I should have given you. I really thought Trevin Giles was smarter than he is, and that parlay was a mistake. Obviously, that's a 2020 hindsight type of decision. I couldn't have known that before this fight because he's never shown that bad of I know, I'm sorry. I told you all I was off it. I'm back on it again. Nasrat got it done. The dude's a beast. He will be minus 500 in his next fight. Now, this is the other thing that kind of upsets me a little bit. I talked about Jim Miller. I talked about wanting to bet Jim Miller. I said Jim Miller would submit Clay Guida. I mean, really, I couldn't have painted that fight any clearer either, and yet I didn't give it as a pick or bet it because they're both dinosaurs. So it was kind of upsetting to have him come out and do everything I said that he would do in under a minute and finish the fight. It was like, damn, I was right, and that might have been the fastest I've ever been right. So it sucked not to actually have a play on it. Now, the main event, that was kind of upsetting. I mean, Robbie Lawler just never let it go. That was really frustrating, and all props to Colby Covington. I can't sit here and be like, oh, well, Robbie let him. No, Colby's pressure froze Robbie Lawler, and that is something we have never seen happen before. Robbie blasted through what Askren did to slam him on his head and then beat his face in. He could not pull the trigger against Colby Covington because of the game plan that Colby implemented. Colby had a masterful 5-round performance against Robbie Lawler, and honestly, that line could have been wider. I thought we had value on Robbie Lawler at that line, and you know what? Robbie defended the takedown. He did the fuck you can't choke me rear naked defense where he didn't even use hands, which that I thought was funny because it was kind of big brothering Colby, that it was like, look, I don't even have to try to stop you from getting my neck. You're not gonna do it. So I found that highly entertaining. And when he did get to the feet, when he did kind of get off just a little bit, you could tell that Colby didn't like it, but he just wouldn't let it go. And that was super frustrating and upsetting for me to have to sit there and stare at because, I thought we had value on him, but we did not, and it was highly unfortunate. But you know what? Colby, I like Colby better than I like Kamaru Usman. Colby he's got a shtick, and I'm not a big fan of his shtick or his political views and all that. That's kind of a topic for a different day. But Usman is like a legitimate thug bully, and I hate that shit. The fact that they got on Colby like 3-on-1 after his last fight, not the Lawler fight, the one before that, and they like attacked him in a food court, that was not cool with me. Like, you gang up on a guy like 3-1 because he's talking trash, which everybody does in MMA, and you're basically trying to like jump him in public, and you're supposed to be the champion. Like, I don't know, I just don't like that shit. That doesn't sit well with me. Colby talks a lot, and I'm okay with that. And then he turns around and does the whole, I do my talking in the cage, I do my fighting in the cage. I like that. Like, you're going to settle it. It's going to be a real fight. It doesn't have to be a street brawl. It doesn't have to be 3-on-1. It just doesn't need to be that way. So, honestly, if Colby gets the crack, which I hope he does considering he was the interim title holder and he's proven just how damn good he is over and over and over again. I hope he gets the next title shot. And I hope he dethrones Kamaru Usman. Nothing would make me happier. Let's get into UFC Uruguay. We kick the night off in the women's flyweight division where Veronica Macedo, 5-3-1, is taking on Polyana Viana, 10-3-0. And you know what? We are going to get the night started early, but first and foremost, I have to apologize to all of you. Oh, I messed this one up. This one was my bad. And I really apologize. So, Polyana Viana is a bit of a internet darling right now. She's the one who caught the dude in the street. He was trying to like take her purse or something like that, and she roughed him up. She made the news. She was all over the place. She's a classic, pretty mixed martial arts fighter. She's out of Brazil. She's very, very talented on the ground, and the UFC is pushing her. The UFC is absolutely pushing her. She's young. She's pretty. She beat the crap out of some dude that tried to like rob her or attack her or something like that in the streets. I mean, it all was very good press. Worked out real well for the UFC. But she is on a 2-fight skid. She lost to JJ Aldrich and Hannah Cyphers after making a successful UFC debut. And she is just really, really dang good off of the ground. I mean, that's really her big thing. I believe she's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. She may have been updated to black belt at this point, but I want to say brown so people don't call me a liar when I say she's a black belt. But the problem is she can get controlled up against the cage. She's not the physically strong, imposing kind of fighter. She's actually really skinny, and she keeps her hands down. She really is open for counters, and she gets overhand rights landed on her a lot. She got roughed up by JJ. She takes the back. She's not afraid to be on her back on the mat, so she gives up bottom position a lot of times because of her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu credentials, and then she goes for these really low percentage submission attempts. So she'll like roll off your back trying to get an arm, which lower level type stuff, you will catch girls in that because they just don't really see it coming and it's an awkward position. And then, like I said, she trusts herself once she gets into a bad spot, so she's okay with going for it. Now, at the higher levels of MMA, as you get better and better and better, that kind of stuff stops working because then they're able to defend against that, and then you're just stuck in a bad position. But I've seen her get on her back and pull guard and flop and go down and be in a bad position way too many times. The other thing is she's a late replacement in this fight, and she slows down. So those two things concern me. The fact that she's both a late replacement fighter because Rachel Ostovich dropped out of this fight and she tends to slow down in fights, those are just kind of bad signs. Now, on the flip side here, Macedo, this girl is something else. Veronica Macedo is only 23 years old. First and foremost, I want to say she's only 23 years old. She got rushed right into the UFC. She is 5-3. Her last 3 losses have come to Ashley Evans-Smith, Andrea KGB Lee, and Jillian Robertson. So let me go through that here one more time. Ashley Evans-Smith, who is a relatively decent fighter and a stiff UFC debut for a 23-year-old woman. Andrea KGB Lee, who we are massively high on and think may have a shot at the future of the division. And Jillian freaking Robertson, who, if we can possibly be higher on somebody as a young up-and-comer than KGB, it would be Jillian Robertson, who is crushing everybody right now. Those are her 3 losses. So she got thrown to the freaking wolves, and this girl is an underrated talent. She has excellent forward pressure. She blitzes in, and she's very physically strong. Now, in the Ashley Evans-Smith fight, she actually broke her elbow, and she didn't pull out of that fight. If that tells you anything, she was fighting massively hindered in that fight. So I don't hold it too much against her that she lost, and the fact that she's willing to grit her teeth and fight through a broken elbow in an MMA fight, holy crap, she is tough. Now, she's really athletic. She's got good work against the cage and in the clinch, which we already have said that Viana has an issue with. She's actually also really solid on the ground herself. Now, I know she gave up a submission against Jillian Robertson, but who hasn't Jillian Robertson submitted? I mean, Jillian Robertson, like I said, is submitting basically everybody. She was able to defend very well against all 3, Jillian, Andrea, and Ashley, in all 3 of those fights. And it wasn't until Jillian caught her in the second round when she was trying to scramble and get back up that it became a problem. She has really good awareness and excellent submission D. She's incredibly tough. She never stops coming forward, and she's very smart. She was landing these blast head kicks on Andrea KGB Lee, which honestly, I am shocked didn't put her out. I am floored that Andrea KGB Lee did not go down, because Veronica Macedo steps in and fires these head and body kicks off that are something else. KGB's head snapped back, and Veronica immediately followed up with 2 more. I mean, it was thunderous. Like, wham, she heard her steps in, and wham, got her back-to-back twice more, and I thought she was going to TKO her. I really did. It was something else. Another thing that I like here in this fight is that Polyana Viana is 27 years old. Yes, she is young, and yes, she can still show improvements and things of that nature, but Macedo is only 23. If either of these girls is going to be showing rapid improvement, big changes in improvement, it's gonna be Macedo. The younger fighter is always the one who is going to be showing the giant, big, huge leaps in skills and abilities. And we haven't seen her since February. So she's taken a good 6 months off to sharpen her skills. And Viana, she fought in March. And like I said, she's a late notice replacement. I think she's going to have a gas tank issue here. Ladies and gentlemen, the first fight of the night is going to be Veronica Macedo. We can still just barely get her at even money. Now, this is where I goofed, because she opened up as a plus 155 favorite. I saw her higher than that earlier in the week because money was pouring in on Polyana Viana, and I thought that because of her hype, because she's pretty, because the UFC is pushing her, that line was going to continue getting steamed in her direction, and we would get right about the same line or potentially a better line on Macedo, so I didn't tweet it out and lock it up. That was my bad. We're going to have to take even money, but I still like even money because, honestly, I think Veronica Macedo wins this. And I'll tell you something else. I think Veronica Macedo finishes this. Veronica Macedo inside the distance is plus 400. And I'm going to start the night off with the bang, ladies and gentlemen. I'm hitting Veronica Macedo inside the distance at plus 400. I'll be honest with you. I'm doing it. I'm going for it. She's fought a far higher caliber of competition in the UFC so far. Jillian Robinson, KGB, and Ashley Evans-Smith are all far more dangerous than JJ Aldrich or Hannah Cyphers. And I actually really like JJ Aldrich, but she kind of has the pillow fist things going on. The kind of shots that she was able to land on Polyana Viana, if Macedo can land those same exact shots, Viana is going to have a bad night. And the fact that Polyana Viana is known to slow down and known to go on her back, Veronica Macedo is going to get on top of her and she is going to pound her into oblivion. Both of these girls are excellent on the ground. They're both fantastic jiu-jitsu specialists, but honestly, I think they're right about the same level. So the official pick for the podcast is going to be Veronica Macedo at plus 100, and I will be sprinkling the inside the distance prop. I'm not going to take her by KO, even though I think that's the more than likely outcome. The fact that she is so talented on the ground and the fact that Viana likes to engage in the grappling means that there's plenty of opportunity for a submission. But plus 400 is straight disrespectful because of the way that this girl can hit. I think there's a decent chance that that happens. Not an official pick, but I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna be on it. Now, here's where things are going to get a little bit sketchy. So I'll be honest with all of you. I have something big and exciting coming up in my personal life, and I am going to need to take a little bit shorter on this podcast than normal. So heads up, apologies to everybody. I know if you're one of the few who loves my an hour and 40 minute long podcast where I break everything down top to bottom, inside and out, and crack jokes. This is not going to be one of those for a couple different reasons. One, because in my personal life, I need a little bit more time this week, and I can't spend multiple hours recording a hour and 30 or hour and 40 minute long episode. And then the other thing is next week, the podcast is going to be coming to you all early. That's right. You're hearing it here. You're hearing it now. I have to record my podcast for UFC 241 ahead of schedule simply because I'm going to be playing in a big fat ass poker tournament. I told you all a long time ago that the way I got my start in gambling, sports betting, everything was playing poker. And I entered in a satellite for a really big tournament. My buy-in was about $130, and 9 other scrubs ponied up their $130, and I kicked their ass and I took all their chips. And I won a ticket into an $1,100 buy-in. It's the Arizona State Championship, and I am going to be there playing in that thing with a prize pool that is massive. First place the last time it ran was over $250,000. So everybody wish me luck. Send me your energy because that would be just fantastic to make a cash in that tournament. And not gonna, mince words or anything. It's the biggest tournament I have ever played in. It's kind of a bucket list thing not bucket list. Bucket lists are bigger than that. But I've wanted to play in it for a couple of years and never got the shot. I'm getting the shot this week. It runs 3 days long though. So the normal time that I would be using to tape study for UFC 241 and then record the podcast, hopefully, fingers crossed, I will still be in the tournament. So I need to plan ahead for success and make sure the podcast and research is done before I go to the tournament because I don't really want to bank on busting out of the tournament and then coming back and doing the podcast. That doesn't sound fun. I'd rather be in there competing for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's what's up. I'm going to roll right on through this. I don't like a lot of these fights. And the reason I don't like a lot of them is twofold. We've been a little wild and crazy, loosey-goosey with a lot of our bets recently, and we have shown small negatives or small positives. Overall, we've been trending in the right direction. We have won more than we have lost recently since we went on that little skid. So we are headed the right direction, but I do want to do a little bit of damage control. I do want to lock up some better, tighter positions, stock up some units, and then we can get back to the more rapid fire pick type thing where we get some more options and go for big scores later on. This is just not the fight to do it, in my opinion, or the fight card to do it, because so many of these fighters are debuting. There's a lot of regional talent tape to watch. There's a lot of low-level talent tape to watch, and then you're throwing these guys in there against each other, and you're not really sure where they stand. So like I said, get your pen and notepad out when we watch these fights. Open an Excel spreadsheet, whatever you want to do. Make sure you log away some of this information because we're just going to be very, very interested in the way a lot of these fights are going to pan out. So the next fight is in the UFC's lightweight division, where Rodrigo Vargas, 10-0, is debuting against fellow debutant Alex da Silva Coelho. Now, this is the UFC's premier division, and you gotta love fresh blood because they are stepping into something else. Both of these guys they're finishers, man. They're gonna bring the heat, and I'm very much looking forward to this fight, but I think it's going to be a brawl. Now, listening to a lot of other podcasters breakdowns, people that like to do kind of the same thing that I do, I see a lot of love out there for Vargas, and he's a plus 225 underdog. Now, here's what's crazy. This is an insane level of reverse line movement situation to me here. Vargas, 92% of the money has come in on him. He opened as a plus 205 underdog. The line has gotten wider. 8% of the money has come in on Silva, and Vargas is now a plus 225 dog. Silva's still right around minus 265, minus 250. I'm not sure. Like I said, I haven't done a whole lot of tape on these guys. I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to them because they're so fresh and young. I want to see how they do in the big show, but my brain tells me that line is wide. One thing I will want to look at this when the lines come out is maybe taking a look at the under on this fight. So when the totals come out later in the week, that might be a total that I get on. Obviously, I think that's going to be juiced because I'm not the only one that sees the finishing ability of these two, but I'm not going to give you a winner here. They're both finishers. This really could go either way. I don't want to tell you dog or pass because of the reverse line movement situation. I don't blame you for taking a shot because a plus 225 dog sounds pretty juicy when both guys are untested and unproven at the top level, but it might be safer just to go under. Our next fight is Geraldo de Freitas Jr. versus Chris Gutierrez. Geraldo is 12-4-0 with Gutierrez being 13-4-1. Now, we have seen de Freitas Jr. one time he fought Felipe Corrales back in February, and that was his UFC debut. He is 12-4, and he's got a nice little sprinkling of basically pretty much everything. He's got 4 KOs, 5 submissions, 3 decisions, so pretty well-rounded. He had a couple bumps on the road earlier in his career, but he's put together a real nice win streak later. Now, Chris Gutierrez, El Guapo, on the other hand, is 13-4. Now, his only recent loss, he's 4-1 in his last 5, was against Hani Barcelos. Now, Hani Barcelos is a complete machine. He's a monster, and there is no shame in losing to Hani Barcelos. He's 14-1, and he is gonna be a problem in the UFC. So I'm actually relatively high on Chris Gutierrez, but this is another one that smells a little funky to me. They opened up Chris Gutierrez as a plus 105 underdog, and most of the money has come in on him, but it's another small reverse line movement situation. Most people are betting Geraldo. He opened up at minus 125, and he's now about minus 140, and that is, honestly, it's scaring me. I kind of like Chris Gutierrez in this fight, but I don't have anything that pushes me over the edge enough to actually pull that trigger. I think it's close. This is where I've done this a couple of times. I feel like there might be very, very thin value on the plus 120 underdog because I think he wins the fight, but it's so narrow. It's so close. I'm going to exercise some self-control. I'm going to tell you all that I lean towards Chris Gutierrez, but I will not be making him an official play this week, and we're just going to have to watch and see how this one plays out. But I do think that this is going to be a bit of a... I think it's going to go to decision, honestly. I think the way these guys match up, it'll go to decision, so I might look at an over in this fight. They're both well-rounded enough and skilled enough that I think they'll be able to essentially meet in the middle, hold each other off, that kind of thing, and it might turn into a bit of a stall match. We will just kind of have to wait and see, but both of them are still so untested as far as the deep end goes, and they're both one's 27 and one's 28. Yeah, I'm steering clear one more time. Sorry for the rough breakdown. You're going to get this a couple more times tonight where I just don't have much of an opinion for you, so I will try to keep it short. I apologize. Lean to Chris Gutierrez and pass. We're taking a step down to flyweight where Rogerio Bortanen takes on Rulian Paiva. Wow, those are a couple of hard names to say. Now, Rogerio's 15-1-0 Rolian, on the other hand, is 18-2-0. So both very, very good, solid records stepping in here. Rogerio is 27 and Rolian is only 23. So Rogerio is one of these stars coming off of Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. He won his Contender Series by rear naked choke, and then he steps into the UFC and barely manages out a split against Magomed Babulatov. And Babulatov is 14-0. He's a very, very impressive fighter. And even though he's on a 2-fight skid right now, I think he's better than that record shows. So I think that's a very strong win for Rogerio to be sporting right here. Now, Rolian, very young, very talented, obviously. He has the exact opposite story. So he gets in off of Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series as well, but he drops his debut via split decision. I found that very entertaining. They're both coming off the Contender Series. One wins by split, one loses by split. And I mean, that's one of those things that really either one of those could have gone either way. They're both right about the same level. It wouldn't be crazy to say that maybe they reverse it. Rogerio could have lost by split. Maybe Paiva wins by split. I mean, it's super, super close. This is another one where I have a lean to Rogerio, but Rolian has all the raw skills. He's very young, and he just moved out to Team Alpha Male. So Alpha Male, you all know about them. That's a solid gym. They're going to be helping this kid out, and he's going to be improving at a very rapid rate, training out there with the murderers that they have at Team Alpha Male. And the line is very reflective of kind of what's going on here. It's a straight pick 'em, -110 across the board. And I can't give you a side on this one because I honestly, if you made me make a pick here, I probably would side with Paiva just because the wrestling and skill set that he's going to get from Team Alpha Male, I think, is going to lend him very well in this fight. But I could absolutely see Rogerio grinding him out and managing a win just like he did over Magomed Babulatov. So don't take anything I have to say on this fight. Once again, we're gonna pass. All right, the next fight, we are headed to the women's strawweight division where Tecia Torres takes on Marina Rodriguez. And here we go. We have a fight that I can break down for you, and I have an opinion on. Get excited, folks. Tecia, the tiny tornado Torres, I am a big fan of this lady. She's fun to me. I think she's drastically underrated, and she actually brings a very, very solid skill set that I'm a huge fan of to the cage. She's dating and or married to Raquel Pennington. I'm not sure if they're married or not, so I apologize if I'm messing that up. We cashed in on Rocky in her last fight. I'm a fan of them. I'm a fan of them as a power couple, and I love what they're doing together. Now, she is incredibly strong and explosive, and that really is something that she kind of relies on, and that's something that really got her in trouble in the last 3 fights of hers. She fought Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and Weili Zhang. I mean, you can't get a more murderer's row than that. I mean, Jessica Andrade is the current champion. Joanna is the former champion and bounced back on her. And Weili Zhang is now the #1 contender who is challenging for the belt against Jessica Andrade. The other thing is, Joanna is the John Jones of the division who is crazy strong, even though she's taller and lankier, so she's got those advantages, height and reach over her opponents. Andrade is a physical monster that really nobody can compare to. And then Weili Zhang is maybe the only other person even close to be able to compare to Jessica Andrade as far as physicality goes. So Tecia really relies on her explosive power and her ability to overwhelm her opponents. Her last 3 opponents have been maybe the only 3 in the division who she could not do that against. You look at her resume, and she's got a who's who of women who she has just messed up. Michelle Watterson, Juliana Lima, Beck Rawlings, Angela Hill, Felice Herrig, Rose Namajunas, Paige Van Zandt. I mean, she's fought almost everybody in the division, and she's beaten most of them. It's only been the absolute upper crust that has gotten the better of her. Now, Marina Rodriguez, on the other hand, is tall and long, very similar to kind of Joanna style, but not the way she fights. She's actually able to be controlled, and in her fight against Randa Marcos in September 2018, where they went to a draw, she was able to get out muscled. She was worked up against the cage. She was taken down. She was held on the ground. She is actually relatively susceptible to submissions. She's gotten in trouble a couple of times, but she's really, really flexible and able to wiggle herself out of there. Now, she actually made a mistake where she tried to slam Jessica Aguilar to get out of a triangle, and that actually landed her even deeper into an armbar, and I thought that was very, very interesting that she tried to pull the power move and slam there like that. I mean, she's strong, but I don't see her having the physical advantage over Tecia Torres. She does keep long, she does attack, she hits the leg, she's got good leg kicks. She's good, don't get me wrong, and she's 11-0, so she's undefeated here. But Ticia's coming off of a 3-fight skid to the elite of the division, and this is basically a must-win fight for her. So I'm going to ride with the Tiny Tornado. I don't think Marina Rodriguez belongs in the company of Weili Zhang, Joanna, and Jessica. I don't think that she's going to be that level of a star. I don't think that she's going to be that level of a fighter. She's got some physical advantages, but Tecia has the ability to explode, close the distance, and get inside. And then once she does that, if this gets up against the cage, she will maul her against the fence. Marina Rodriguez is taller than Tecia Torres is. That gives Tecia the grappling advantage. If she wants to take this thing to the ground, combined with her strength and power, she'll have easy access to the hips and the legs. I think she just kind of roughs her up for a full 3 rounds, and I think she gives Marina Rodriguez her first real L. We can get Tecia Torres at -150, and I love it. I think that's a great line to get here for her to bounce back. Lock it up. Now, the next fight is probably the biggest stay away on the card. Ciryl Gane, 3-0 at 29 years old, is making his UFC debut against Rafael Pessoa, who is 30 years old and is also making his UFC debut, but he is 9-0. And holy cow, between the two of these guys, freaking Rafael's got 6 KO TKOs, and Ciryl, on the other hand, is got 2 of his 3 wins by TKO, and then the other one is by submission. So he's a finisher. He's the hot prospect. He's rolling in here to fight Rafael, but they are both completely untested at the larger level. This is going to be a banger. Ciryl opened up at -420, and Rafael is +335. This is one of those ones where dog or pass, ladies and gentlemen. They are both green. They are both fresh, new, and young. And yeah, Ciryl is probably going to win this thing by KO, but +300 is ridiculous. When you get these middle-of-the-road heavyweights, +300 is ridiculous. I don't think the line should be this wide on such young fighters. Maybe he's the next Francis Ngannou. I'm not going to make a play here. If I was going to, I would sprinkle the dog just because of how ridiculous the line is, but I do not suggest touching this fight. Sit back, grab some popcorn, watch somebody's head get taken off and thrown into the stands. Now we close off the UFC's preliminary card with Gilbert Burns moving up a weight class to 170 to take on Alexei Kunchenko, who is undefeated. This is a fun fight. Gilbert Burns is 33 years old and he is streaking. He is coming into his prime. Alexei Kunchenko is 35 years old and he's just kind of getting started in the UFC, but he is 20-0 and he's got a ridiculous 65% KO rate in those 20 wins. The dude's a beast. He's a finisher. Now, Gilbert Burns is 4-1 of his last 5, with the only one loss coming by KO to Dan Hooker. Now, we all remember Dan Hooker. We know how damn good Dan Hooker is. So that's not that bad of a loss, and Gilbert Burns had his moments in that fight too. The other thing to recall here is he is a big 155er. He is not a little guy. So him moving up to 170 on short notice is not that big of a deal. He's actually going to fit the 170 build relatively well, in my opinion. On top of that, I think he's going to have a massive speed advantage here because he's used to fighting at 155 where there's a lot more movement, there's a lot more gas in the tank, and they still can drop bombs. Alexei Kunchenko, on the other hand, is relatively slow and plodding. He's one of those guys that he's a real muscle house. You know what I mean? He's a big dude. He's thick, but he doesn't really move a whole lot. Gilbert Burns, the 155er, is going to have the height and reach advantage on him because he's just so squat and wide. So he's going to be hard to take down, which makes Gilbert, makes it difficult for him to use his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. This is probably mostly going to be contested on the feet. But I can absolutely see Gilbert Burns winning this thing. I don't understand why the line is as wide as it is. Alexei Kunchenko opened up at minus 150. The comeback on Burns is plus 120, and we can find a plus 130 dangling out there, and I'm going to hit it. I'm going to take Gilbert Burns at plus 130. We have seen what some of the elite top of the division lightweight guys have done. Take a look at Showtime Pettis, Donald Cerrone, even Masvidal. These bigger, larger lightweights that are killing themselves to get down to 155, they pop up to 170, and they're monsters. Now, you may think red flag Gilbert Burns is taking a short notice fight here, but his little brother just competed on the Contender Series. Actually, tonight, as I'm recording this, his little brother is competing on the Contender Series. He has been in camp getting his younger brother ready for his Contender Series debut. Any good sibling would be doing that. It's not like he's coming off the couch. He's been prepping his little bro to get his shot at the UFC. He's gonna be in shape, and the fact that he doesn't have to cut down to 155 means he's gonna have plenty of gas in the tank. Now, like I said, he's already big for 155, so he's going to fit up at 170 really, really well. He's got very well-rounded striking. He's got good, solid leg kicks, and he does a good job of attacking the body. He cuts really good angles, and Alexei Kunchenko is hittable. His 2 UFC wins have come over Thiago Alves and Yushin Okami. Now, I don't need to tell you that Thiago Alves is a shell of himself, and Thiago had massive success going to the leg kicks against Alexei Kunchenko. I think if Gilbert Burns watched that, he really can implement that game plan, maybe even better so than Thiago Alves did, because Kunchenko didn't check anything. His legs were getting eaten up by Thiago, but Thiago just isn't as good as he used to be. And Yushin Okami, the former 185er, sucking himself out in his old age to cut down to 170, I think that Gilbert Burns is better than him too at this point. He's damn near 40 years old. He's not beating anybody, and he just got kicked out of the UFC and headed over to ONE, and he dropped both of the fights that he had over in ONE FC. So a win over Yushin Okami doesn't mean shit to me in this day and age. Thiago Alves, not a bad UFC debut, but it doesn't mean a whole lot to me either. Now, Alexei Kunchenko could walk through everything Gilbert Burns has to throw at him and land a KO bomb on him. He could. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he can't do that, but I think Gilbert Burns can essentially stick and move, and if he keeps going to the legs and the body like he usually does, he might end up being able to mix in some takedowns when things get a little hairy later on there, and that's where Burns really shines. If he can get this to the ground, I know he's going to have a hard time getting it there, but if he can, I'll bet you he can ground and pound Kunchenko out or submit him. The other thing is, I think he can just kind of stick and move his way to a decision. I see multiple paths to victory for Gilbert Burns, whereas I think Kunchenko is going to be chasing Burns around the octagon basically the whole night. Yeah, he could land that big bomb. Yeah, he could knock him out with one big shot if Gilbert Burns slows down, but I don't think he's going to because of the fact that he's going to have that extra weight on him in a good way, not in a bad way, because like we already talked about, he is in shape. He's not your normal late notice replacement. I think Burns is going to be really relatively good to go here. I think it's a solid play. I think that line is wide. I will take the value on Gilbert Burns at plus 130. All right, next up, we kick off the main card with Enrique Barzola, 15-4-1, facing off against Bobby Moffett, 14-4-0. Barzola's 30, Moffett is 29, and this is a interesting fight. Honestly, I think this is a bit of a sleeper fight when it comes to the fight card this evening because, man, there's so much interesting stuff going on here. Let me break it down for you. Enrique Barzola, 15-4-1. He's fighting out of the Pitbull Martial Arts Center, and he just recently got his 4-fight win streak broken by Kevin Aguilar. Wow, that was a mouthful. I didn't expect that to be such a tongue twister. My bad. So Barzola trained at ATT. However, for this camp, it looks like he moved over to AKA, which that's a solid move in my opinion. ATT may be the best gym in the game, but AKA is not far behind them, and they still have absolute murderers over there like Khabib, Daniel Cormier, stuff like that. And that's the place you want to be if you're working your wrestling. Now, I want to point out a couple stats here on Barzola. He's got 71.35% significant striking defense. 71% significant striking defense. He does not get hit. He's got a 75% takedown defense, which is solid. And then he can pair that with a solid grappling game himself. He's got good takedown offense. Once he gets it down there, he's got solid ground and pound. He hammers with hard leg kicks. He's got really good footwork. He can switch stances. He's fluid on the feet. The biggest thing I like about him is he's got really good timing. He's able to feel his opponent's timing. He's able to sort them out, and then he really can hammer back on counter shots and stuff like that. Now, he does use a lot of gas. He uses a lot of power. He tries to end the fight, and he tends to slow down as the fight goes on. And that's kind of a little bit of a negative against him, in my opinion, because his last 5, 6, 7 fights have all gone to decision. He fancies himself a knockout artist, but at the UFC level, he's just not KOing anybody. So he's a bit of a decision machine, and the fact that he slows down in round 3 is a little bit concerning. Bobby Moffett on the flip side of this, the Wolfman, which I love, that's a great nickname, fights out of the MMA lab over here in Arizona. Now, he recently just pulled the old switcheroo, and he's not fighting at the MMA lab anymore. He moved over to Fight Ready, which our boy Henry Cejudo trains out of. And he apparently has been training with Cejudo to get ready for this fight, which that's something. Now, he also has access to all of the crap they've got over there at Fight Ready, and his physique that he's posting up on Instagram looks like it's massively improved. He's starting to look a little bit like Cejudo did when he started packing on all that insane muscle. They're taking similar pictures right before fight time, it looks like, with some of their fighters. Same, super flex type pose. And Moffett looks damn good. He looks in better shape than I've seen him in a long time. They know what they're doing over there. They've got a really good system. I don't want to say they've got any extra sauce or anything going on there, but it wouldn't shock me because these guys are packing on pounds of muscle, and it's impressive. So he moves over. Good move. I think Fight Ready's better than MMA Lab, which I'm a fan of MMA Lab, but if I had to pick one, I like Fight Ready. Now, he throws heavy shots, but striking is not his forte. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but he is hittable. Now, obviously, that's something that he's working on because his forte is on the ground. He's susceptible on the feet, but he's got a 72% takedown accuracy. I know he's only got 2 UFC fights, so that's not a large sample size, but he's got 9 of his 14 wins coming by submission, and he averages 4.17 takedowns every 15 minutes, and he's got a 53% striking defense. That's the scary part to me. This is a striker versus grappler matchup where Barzola has a solid ground game, but he's a better striker. Flip this thing, and Bobby Moffett has a solid ground game, and he's okay at striking. It's going to be a very interesting spot to find out who can find that chink in their opponent's armor. Now, Bobby Moffett, opened up as the dog here. He's plus 150. 67% of the money has come in on him, pushing that down to about plus 125. Now, Enrique Barzola opened at minus 170 and is sitting about minus 145 at this point. There has been a little buyback on him. He's up at about 150, 160 in a couple spots, but we can still get him as low as minus 140, actually. And I think I like Barzola here. We did see Bobby Moffett get clipped a couple times in his last few fights. He got hurt by Bryce Mitchell, who's a submission guy himself, and that's kind of a bit of a red flag here. But I also have a hard time going against the Fight Ready gym. Knowing what they're capable of, knowing what they can do with their fighters and the types of improvements that they make, they're kind of drastic. And he's 29 years old, so it's not like he's old. He's kind of coming into his prime. We talk about people able to make improvements, drastic leaps and bounds, that kind of thing. He's not out of the realm of possibility for that. This move to Fight Ready could be something huge. As much as I think that line movement goes in our favor, and I really want to pull the trigger on Enrique Barzola because Bobby Moffett has shown to be just a little bit chinny. He can get clipped. He can get hurt. With Barzola working over at AKA and ATT, I think he's more than able to keep this fight standing and avoid the submission. He's never been submitted. He's only lost 4 times, and all 4 of those have been by decision. But the 4 losses by decision have not been to the cream of the crop. This one's close. I want to bet Barzola. I lean Barzola. I'm not going to make an official pick. This is one of those self-control moments where I think Barzola gets it done, but I'm not going to go against everybody betting on Moffitt because I know a lot of people out there obviously are, and he's showing that he's making drastic improvements. We're assuming that Enrique Barzola is making improvements because of the gym he's training out, but we've seen it in Moffitt with the pictures and stuff that he's been posting. So really, really close. Really close. I'm going to have to pass, but if I had to pick one, I'm going Barzola. Next up, we're moving up to some of the bigger boys. We're going to go to the middleweight division where Rodolfo I messed that name up bad. Sorry. Rodolfo. My tongue doesn't do that. Rodolfo Vieira, 5-0, 29 years old, takes on Oscar Pechota, who is 11-1-0, also 29 years old, interestingly enough. And this is a fight where, remember I talk about sometimes you want to be on the side of the UFC? Yeah, that's what we're doing. The black belt hunter, Rodolfo Vieira, is a sick jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's Damian Maia, the second generation. He's a reincarnation of prime Damian Maia. He's 5-0. He's got 1 KO and 4 submissions, and he is a wizard on the ground. I think my boy MMA Kelton said something about him slicing through guys like butter, and that was the best thing. I think that was the best way you could possibly describe his Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Luke Thomas is high on this guy, and very, very well so. He passes guard like nothing else. When he gets this fight to the ground, you can't stop him. He's got 4 of his 5 fights finished in the first round. It took him to the third round to finish his second fight back in 2017. But we can't really fault the guy. Obviously, he's still finishing basically everything. But the only way you survive against this guy right now is do not let it touch the ground. You can't go to the ground with Rodolfo Vieira. And the UFC has paired him up with Oscar Pechota. And Pechota was undefeated coming into the UFC and won his first 2 UFC fights relatively handily and then ran into Gerald Meerschaert. Now, this is where the UFC is setting up their boy Vieira because they want him to win over this 11-1 fighter. They want a spectacular victory for his UFC debut. Oscar Pechota showed in the Gerald Meerschaert fight that he is not able to hang on the ground. He completely gassed out in that fight after about 1 round of grappling. And if you do that against Vieira, you are dead. Now, I came into this thinking Pechota's no cupcake. Just going kind of off of memory, I heard some people on Twitter. I was talking to my boys. Shout out to UFC Bro Picks, MMA Kelton. Love you guys. I was talking to them about Vieira and also Z. Rocker Z. Got to give that guy a follow as well. Everyone's high on Vieira, and I'm like, you know what? Pechota, he's no joke, man. You can't be sleeping on Pechota. Like, you just can't. And boy, I went back there and I watched the Gerald Meerschaert tape. Now, that was back in 2018, so maybe he's improved, but you will not improve to the level of Vieira in that amount of time. You cannot. It's impossible. BJ Penn, who was the prodigy, could not have made that type of leaps and bounds to match this level. Now, if it stays on the feet, Pechota's probably got a shot. He's got heavy hands. The dude's got a couple KOs to his names. He's a finisher. And I think he could put it together still and be something. But the Gerald Meerschaert fight, he got controlled. He got pushed up against the cage. He got taken down. He was sloppy on the ground. He gave up positions. He had spots where he was able to attack Gerald Meerschaert and honestly should have subbed him, and better fighters would have subbed him, but he couldn't get it done. But he is able to and willing to engage in the grappling. Now, obviously, he's going to come into this fight knowing all about Vieira, knowing he can't engage in the grappling. And unless he goes for a Masvidal style 7-second running start, head kick KO type of thing, I think Vieira gets his meat hooks on him, drags him to the mat, drags him into deep waters, and then just makes him bleed. I think Vieira chokes this guy out, and I think it's essentially a foregone conclusion. I'm surprised the line isn't wider. We can get Rodolfo Vieira right now at minus 200, and I don't normally like to lay that kind of wood. That's in my parlay pricing, but honestly, there's nobody on the fight card that I want to parlay him with, and that's really my issue here, so we're just going to lay it. We're going to play Rodolfo Vieira at minus 200. We're going to lay 2 units to win 1 here because I think he chokes this guy out in the first. All right, we're getting into cursed territory here where we go to lightweight. Volkan No Time Ozdemir is facing Ilir Latifi, and I have broken this fight down enough times to make myself sick. This will be the third time that these guys are scheduled to fight one another, and they're going to be knocking on the door of Khabib and Tony territory if something goes wrong on fight day to cancel this one. The first time, Ilir Latifi had a back injury and forced him to pull out. The second time, there were visa issues, and they weren't able to actually get both fighters in the same place at the same time because of those visa issues to make the fight actually happen. So we are trying again to piece this fight together, and I'm going to be short and sweet. I think Ozdemir KOs Latifi. Latifi dips his toe in the deep end of the division, and every time he does, he gets mauled. Volkan Ozdemir has phenomenal takedown defense outside of Daniel Cormier, obviously, and then he slipped up against Anthony Smith. Everybody else he's fought, he has wrecked, he's KO'd, and he's got the name No Time for a reason. He's got a 73% knockout rate, 11 wins by KO, and a lot of them in the first round. He also came back in a fight against Dominic Reyes where he won a split decision, and he lost a split decision. I'm going to say he won the split decision, though, because I bet on Dominic Reyes that fight. I told you all to bet on Dominic Reyes on that fight. We cashed, and we shouldn't have. We robbed the bookies that night, because watching that fight in preparation for this breakdown multiple times over, Ozdemir beat Reyes. I still stand by that. I think Ozdemir won that fight. Reyes got by on the skin of his teeth, and he should not have gotten that win. So Volkan Ozdemir, in my opinion, is not on a 3-fight skid. He lost to the champion, Daniel Cormier, very unsurprisingly. Nobody understood just how good Anthony Smith was at the time that he lost to him, so he got choked out. That's understandable. And then he beat Dominic Reyes. He's not in as bad of a spot as people are making it out to be, and Latifi cannot hang in the top 5 of the 205-pound division. I think Volkan Ozdemir uses his range, keeps his distance, defends 1 or 2 takedowns while Latifi is fresh, and then clips the side of the little dude's head and puts him out cold. We will roll with Volkan Ozdemir at minus 135. We're not going to take the knockout prop simply because we saw a new wrinkle in Volkan's game where he was able to go toe-to-toe with Reyes for a full 3 minutes and take that thing to a decision if he wants to. He might be adding new wrinkles to his game. He might be trying to not just go KO or bust because of what happened to him in the Daniel Cormier fight where it got flipped on him in the second round after he wasn't able to finish it. So I don't want to rule out a decision win. Minus 135 is perfect. That gives us enough value. We don't have to cry about it if he knocks him out early. And honestly, it's funny. I feel like that's a bet that I have to make. I mean, I feel like I don't have an option because I've broken it down so many times. I've done 2 full podcast breakdowns for this fight. Both times I've given Volkan Ozdemir as a pick. Now that the fight might actually be happening, I don't feel like I can go back on that. So until I see something that tells me there's a red flag on Volkan, I'm just going to keep saying Volkan until the damn fight happens. All right, after a brief skid with the big dogs, we're going to roll back down to featherweight where Luis Guardo Garinori is facing Humberto Bandené, and those are more difficult names for me to say. I hope you all are appreciative. You are getting work out of me tonight with these damn names. Luis is 30 years old, and Humberto is 24. Luis, however, is making his UFC debut and is 11-0, undefeated with a nice little sprinkling of finishes here. He's got 4 KOs, 5 submissions, and only 2 of his fights have gone to decision. Humberto, on the other side of this, has 14 wins and 6 losses, 5 KOs, 6 submissions, 3 decisions, so another well-rounded sprinkling of skills. And he made it into the UFC in 2017, won in 26 freaking seconds by KO over Martin Bravo, but then proceeded to drop the next 2 fights. So he's on a 2-fight skid, and now he's facing the undefeated Luis Eduardo Gregori. And I'll be honest with everybody, this is just one more of those fights that I am going to sprint away from because I think the UFC is setting up Luis here. I think that Humberto is a young but broken prospect. I think he's someone who they were high on, and he has not lived up to the hype. Obviously, he got it started fantastically with that KO, that first round KO knee. But after that, he's been relatively disappointing. So they're trying to start fresh. They're bringing in Prime Luis, who is 11-0, and I don't know that it's first L time. I don't know that I want to go against the UFC when they're looking to try to build a star out of somebody. This is, however, another slight, close reverse line movement situation. Luis opened up as a minus 135 favorite. 54% of the money has come in on him, and he's down to minus 115. So it's moving the wrong direction. You would think most people would be betting the undefeated bro coming in here and making a name off of the UFC kid that's on the 2-fight skid so he gets his walking papers. And it's just too close for me to call. If you want to lean, I'd say roll with the undefeated Luis, because like I said, I think this is the UFC saying, look, you're undefeated, you're a fresh new name, this kid bombed, let's build another star off of him. That's what I think is going on here, and I think that the fight is very, very close. Both of them are well-rounded, both of them are skilled, they're good strikers, they both have submissions. Humberto, however, has shown that he is susceptible to submissions. 4 of his 6 losses have come by submission, so I wouldn't be shocked if Luis keeps his O, as they say, keeps that 0 next to his undefeated record there, and ends up choking out Humberto Bandone. But I'm not going to touch it. That reverse line movement kind of scares me. Somebody out there may know something that I don't, and I've actually got more picks on this card than I expected to have, so we're going to steer clear of this one. That brings us to your co-main event of the evening and the people's main event of the evening, an absolute banger of a fight where Vicente Luque is taking on Mike Perry. Oh, I could not be more excited. This fight, holy crap, this is violence incarnate. Now, Vicente Luque has long been held as the next big thing. A lot of people are really high on Vicente Luque, and it's understandable. He's 16-6. However, those 6 fights came very, very early in his career. Right now, he's on a 5-fight tear. Before that, he lost to Leon Edwards, and he was on a 4-fight win streak prior to that. He's got a ton of UFC experience, and he's a monster. He's got 9 KOs and 6 submissions. Very, very well-rounded skill set, and he's pretty durable, too. He's facing Mike Platinum Perry, and oddly enough, they're both 27 years old. You'd think Mike Perry would be a little older. He maybe just wears it a little worse. Vicente Luque still's got his model good looks, and Mike Perry's looking pretty rugged over there, but he's probably a guy that leads a little bit harder of a life. You can't help but love him, though. I'm a huge fan of Mike Perry. I'm a huge fan of the way that he fights, and he's been showing improvements. The dude has been moving around. He's training with Jacare Souza, and he is getting better and better. On top of that, he may actually have been fighting some of the better competition. Now, I know Vicente Luque fought guys like Bilal Muhammad, Leon Edwards, Nico Price. I mean, those are some damn good names, and he was the one that crushed poor Brian Barberena and took his chin home with him. Barb hasn't been the same since. Perry, on the other hand, has fought Santiago Ponzinibbio, Alan Jouban, Paul Felder, Max Griffin, and Donald Cerrone. I mean, that's a pretty damn good list of names over there, too. So, granted, he's got a bit of a spottier run, but Mike Perry is getting better. And this is the thing that scares me about this fight. I talked about Rodolfo Vieira and not having someone to parlay him with. I kind of thought I would come in here and tell you to parlay him up with Vicente Luque. If you like Luque, go ahead and do that, because that'll get you about even money on those two, and you can load up on the two of them if you think that they're both going to win, rather than laying 4 units to win 2. We've talked about this strategy before. However, I think Perry's live here. Perry's a plus 195 underdog, and I know Vicente Luque is Vicente Luque. Don't get me wrong. I'm fully aware of this. But he got hurt. He got caught against Brian Barberena, and I think Mike Perry hits harder than Brian Barberena. Vicente Luque, I don't know that he is as technical as we make him out to be. He does get sucked into brawls. He had a really hard time with Barberena. Barberena was exactly the kind of guy that caused him problems. He would not engage in the technical striking, and he would not go away. Mike Perry has never been knocked out. His shin is legendary. He's able to walk through basically everything. The dude's got the thickest skull that maybe I have ever seen. Like I said, he's training with Jacare. He's getting better and better and better on the ground every day. Honestly, I think he made a mistake against Donald Cerrone, and Donald Cerrone's a complete badass on the ground. So losing by submission to Donald, not that bad of a thing in my opinion. And his wins over Oliveira and Felder actually really stand out to me, showing that he's getting better at his pacing and he's becoming more and more technical. Following him closely on social media, he's been bringing lots of high-level boxers in for training camp, and I've got a weird feeling. I'm going to pass on this fight, and you don't normally hear that from me because I've got a very weird feeling. I mean, he was able to go toe-to-toe with Santiago Ponzinibbio for 3 rounds and didn't crack to that. I know Paul Felder ended up breaking his hand, but Paul can crack too, and he wasn't able to put Mike Perry out. Same thing with Alan Jouban. Alan Jouban was the guy that everyone was saying Mike Perry's going to be able to... Alan Jouban was supposed to be the guy that could outclass Mike Perry, and he did, but he was also supposed to be able to hurt Mike Perry, and he really couldn't. Vicente Luque may throw himself at a brick wall here. I think Perry is kind of Barberena 2.0, and if Perry forces a brawl out of Luque, if Luque gets frustrated that he's not able to hurt and finish Perry, especially if Perry's able to mix in his newfound ground game, if he's improved enough to the point that he can get Luque on the ground. I know Luque's got submissions, but I think Perry can control him and stay safe from top position. As long as he doesn't give up his back and give up a choke or something like that, I think he can land some serious ground and pound and score some solid points there. He did that against Alex Oliveira, and it was relatively brutal. This is going to be a banger, and I honestly wouldn't surprised if we see an over here, simply because Luque is not going to be able to crack Perry's chin. And Luque is shown to be durable himself, but I don't know if Perry is going to be maybe the first one to show him his first KO. This is a crazy fight. This one is such a good fight. I think there's value on Mike Perry at plus 195, but like I said, I've got this weird gut feeling. I came in expecting to be on Luque, expecting to parlay him, expecting to tell you to load up on him, and then after tape studying and watching and digging, I'm far more interested in Mike Perry. And the last time this happened, the fight didn't go any way like I thought it was going to. So I'm going to stay off. I'm going to one more time exercise some discipline, and I'm going to pass. And I know the world is just absolutely divided on this fight. So I don't blame you if you pick either side of this fight because I think they both have their merits. But let me just tell you one last thing. This is the spot where you want to bet Mike Platinum Perry. He has been overrated in the UFC since he's come in. As far as line value goes, he's been a massive favorite way too often. He's a big dog here, and we haven't seen him at this kind of a big dog price in a while, and that's when he performs best. When he's counted out, when he's underestimated, when he is the underdog, that's when he shows up. And especially his first 2 fights in the UFC, he was a massive underdog, and he KO'd the hell out of people, and that's how we fell in love with him in the first place. I wouldn't be shocked if Mike Perry pulls this off. That takes us to the main event, ladies and gentlemen, where Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko is trying to get that loss back against Liz freaking Carmouche. This is kind of a fun one and kind of not a fun one. It's almost like when Bisping got his vengeance against Dan Henderson. It's not a fight that necessarily makes sense, but it's a good fight for the fighters. Valentina dropped the 2 losses to Amanda Nunes, but the other loss on her record was a KO by Liz Carmouche, but it wasn't a real KO. It was a cut, a doctor stoppage type of KO. It was a real funky situation, and apparently it's been eating at her ever since. Valentina Shevchenko is a complete beast. We saw her KO Jessica I Dead just a couple months ago, and that was fun. I'm very happy to see her back in the cage because it's really fun to watch her work, and she is super well-rounded. We just saw her older sister, and we cashed in on her older sister doing her thing last week, so we know she's coming into shape. She always is coming into shape, and I can't say enough good things about Valentina Shevchenko. She might be the most well-rounded women's mixed martial arts fighter in the game right now. Amanda Nunes may be the best because she can play to her strengths, but I think Shevchenko may be the most dangerous everywhere because of her knockout and submission threat. She's dangerous no matter where this fight goes. Now, Liz Carmouche on the flip side of this thing is a massive, massive underdog. She's sitting at about plus 800 right now. And She's just completely being counted out of this fight. She's actually 4-1 in her last 5, dropping a split to Alexis Davis, but she's a decision machine. The woman's a little tank. Now, she's 35 years old, which you all know that's kind of my line for women. That's my 40 for women, where they kind of maybe start to lose their edge just a little bit. But she's a physical, mauling grinder. I don't know that that's going to affect her as much because she's not relying so much on her athleticism, her quick twitch reflexes, darting in and out, landing bombs, shots, stuff like that. She doesn't really do that. She likes to rough her opponents up. She's got 6 KO, TKO victories and 5 decisions because she likes to control and maul her opponents. Now, we are going to see this fight pinned up against the cage. We are going to see Liz try to put Shevchenko on the mat because there's no way she's going to be able to stand toe-to-toe with her. I'm sorry, there just isn't. And I think she is smart enough to know that. Now, this is a 5-round main event. I think we might be able to bank on the toughness of Liz Carmouche. I want to see the lines when they come out, because if they give me like a 2.5, a 2.5, I might go over. I mean, Carmouche is a beast. She's only got 2 losses by submission on her entire record. And one of those was to Ronda freaking Rousey, and the other one was all the way back in 2011 before that. She just doesn't get finished. And I know that's tempting fate to say that she doesn't get finished when she's facing Valentina Shevchenko, who finishes essentially everybody. But let's not forget, she just went to a 5-round decision with Joanna. Now, I'm not comparing Liz to Joanna as far as their skill sets goes, but I'm saying a decision isn't entirely out of the realm of possibility. She went to decision with Holly Holm back in 2016 as well. Sarah Kaufman before that. I mean, Valentina is streaking here, but Liz Carmouche is tough as nails. So I don't think I want to play Shevchenko inside the distance at minus 145 here. I think that's wrong. I know that was the play with Jessica Ai, and it was even money. That was a good play. We should have made that one, but I don't think that this is the place. I do think that the over is the way to go here. I think that Shevchenko wins this thing via 5-round decision because Carmouche is able to grapple with her, wear her down, tire her out, and take some of that heat off of her kicks. And then I think Carmouche will be able to stay safe in the grappling ballpark until this thing gets long enough that it's no longer much of a threat and they just kind of pitter-pat at one another. I wouldn't be shocked if this thing goes the full 5 rounds. Carmouche by 5-round decision is plus 1285. I'm not telling you to bet that, but that's a bit of a crazy line there. I want to see the odds when the totals come out. I think I'm going to plan on betting the over. We're going to pass on the main event from a side perspective, although I think you can parlay Shevchenko to hell and back. She's going to be a minus 1,200, 1,400 favorite, as she damn well should be, because we know Liz Carmouche is not winning this fight. But I'm not a big fan of doing that. That's bridge jumping prices. You know what I mean? If Carmouche happens to pull the upset of, I guess, the year at this point, that'd be awful to parlay a bunch of stuff to Shevchenko and lose on it. So I don't tend to normally do that, but I also don't know that it's a bad strategy because Shevchenko is going to win this thing. All right, that'll do it, diehards. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that. And once again, I am a bold-faced liar because even though I said this thing was going to be short and tight, we went 1 hour and 17 freaking minutes. I love MMA too much. I can't help myself. I try every time to cut this damn show down, and it's just not freaking possible. I do have to give a couple shout-outs. My boy Jason Looney over there, he had a huge night last week, and he was kind enough to send me a tip. Thank you for that, my man Jason. I got another tip from my man Richard Kim. He sent me $10, and he did that to buy me a beer. And that brought a smile to my face. That was one of the nicest things I think I have ever seen. He sent me $10 just so he could buy me a beer because he likes the podcast, and that was freaking cool. Real strong move there, Richard. You're my man. I appreciate that, and this is the point where I do want to let you all know, once again, I do this for the love of it. I'm a degenerate gambler in a good way. I say that with love, not actually saying I'm in the hole financially or anything like that, but I'm not a professional bettor. I'm sharing my insight and my quote-unquote expertise in this area, but I'm not a professional bettor. Place your bets at your own risk. I'm not telling you to put your money anywhere. There's always somebody every single time that feels like I'm putting a gun to their head and telling them that they have to bet their money on something. That's not what's happening. You're making your own choices. I'm just telling you what I am going to bet. However, tips and donations are massively appreciated for the show because, like I said, I'm a one-man show. This is a small show, and I do put in a lot of time and effort to bring you a very entertaining podcast, so I would appreciate tips and donations. They always mean the absolute world to me. You can send those to me over on PayPal. maximusin3d@gmail.com is the PayPal address, or I accept Venmo at DieHardMMA. Thank you all once again for the love and support. I really appreciate it. Let's recap those picks. We are kicking our night off with Veronica freaking Macedo. We got her at plus 100. We missed out on the juicy dog line, but we still find value at plus 100 because I think she just gets it done here, and we might even cash a sprinkle on plus 400 inside the distance. We're going to lay the wood with Tisha Torres to bounce back off her skid and prove that she's still one of the elite at minus 150. We're going to take a stab with Gilbert Burns as a short notice underdog to prove that he is also one of the elite, and just because he fights a weight class down doesn't mean that we should doubt him. We're going to lay the wood on Rodolfo Vieira to get a choke because, let's face it, that's gonna happen. Then we're going to rock with our guy No Time, Volkan Oezdemir, minus 135. Those is the picks this week, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for the love and support. Give me a follow at DieHardMMA Podcast like we talked about before. Comment, like, share, subscribe. Give me a 5-star rating. Hit me up on Twitter or Instagram. Love you all. Good luck. We'll talk to you soon. Pray to the gambling gods that they smile on us one more time this weekend. Let's roll.